Hello, my name is Emmett Jackson, and this is my presentation for my program evaluation proposal for Dr. Bronson's class at Lamar University in the Graduate Studies program. Today's presentation is on the Blue in the School, or BITS program, which is a collaborative effort between the Dallas Police Department and the Dallas Independent School District. The first thing we'll be talking about a little bit is the needs for the particular program. Then we'll talk a little bit about what the program is. We'll talk just a little about past research, and then the actual program evaluation methodology that I would like to employ. Obviously, the Blue in the School program is needed for several reasons. First, there is an obvious need for children to have anti-bullying or a decision-making instruction. According to StopBullying.com, which is a website that tracks bullying statistics in America, in 2014, 160,000 students missed at least one day of school because of fear or intimidation from their classmates. So clearly there is an issue there. The BITS program itself, it concentrates on anti-bullying, decision-making, the recognition of family violence in the household and how to report it, and good decision-making. The program entails having a Dallas police officer come into fourth grade classrooms. It's taught exclusively in fourth grade for 4 straight weeks. The different classroom lessons are taught on things like honesty, anti-bullying, integrity, decision-making, if there is family violence in the household, who to report it to and how to report it, and peer pressure reduction techniques. The Blue in School program is taught in all 7 subdivisions of the city of Dallas. It is taught mostly in what we like to refer to as tag areas. Tag areas are areas that are the highest in crime, have the highest incidence of offenses, and it's where the majority of police resources are concentrated. This is done so that those children who are most at risk can get the most exposure to officers and to the life skills training that's provided. Blue in the School actually is it's an offshoot of an earlier program offered by Dallas referred to as LETS, or Law Enforcement Teaching Students. LETS has actually been adopted by the Roanoke and Mesquite police departments and is currently taught. So the BITS program is actually an improvement on a program that's already been adopted in other municipalities. A little bit of the research. There actually was very little research that I could find that specifically dealt with programs where police officers taught life skills. Almost all of the scholarship out there has to do with drug prevention or drug use reduction programs amongst children. The most common, or the one that most everyone is aware of, is DARE, or Drug Abuse Resistance Education, which was taught in the 1980s. The scholarship on that, all the research says that it was not effective, that it did not reduce the amount of drug use amongst children, and there is a pretty active debate even today on whether or not that particular program can be resurrected and changed in order to make it meaningful and useful. The research that I found, I did find research on one particular program that was actually taught in England. It's called SPICE. A little different than the American program. In this particular program, a teacher, a police officer, and the school nurse all teach the program to the children. So there is a kind of a 3-pronged teaching model that's facilitated by the teacher with the police officer and the school nurse there to provide their expertise and their input. What was found in that particular program was, again, their drug reduction did not occur, but there was an uptick in the students' familiarity and their comfort level with police, which I think is a very important takeaway from all the programs, DARE included. What was found is that police officers were seen to be more palatable or accepted by students simply because of their presence in teaching. Another program which was that was taught actually dealt with what was called DARE Plus program. It was taught in Minnesota in the early 2000s, and it entailed DARE in the middle school with an additional anti-violence component. This particular anti-violence component, much like SPICE, added community outreach, some involvement from teachers and involvement from peers. There was a three group study done amongst some children were put in DARE Plus, some in DARE only, and then some that were in a control group that received neither. What was found is that the DARE Plus program, with the holistic approach of having the community and peers also involved in that anti-violence component, showed better results than DARE alone or the control group. So again, the holistic approach of having more than one voice giving the same message was seen to be effective. And again, police officers were seen to be more accepted by the students. Some research that occurred in Australia that I think is important is school-age children between 9 and 11 were asked simple questions. What do you think of the police? What do you think their role is? Would you like to be a police officer when you grow up? And what do you think they do? What they found was that most children viewed police in a punitive role. Even those who saw them in a protective role used words like hitting or killing to refer to the way that they meted out justice. Even children who had parents who were police officers. I think that's very important scholarship. I think it's very important research because it shows that the views of police are more from a authoritarian role. This goes hand in hand with another research project I found where they specifically looked at the way that adolescents viewed interactions with police, where they saw those interactions as being legitimate or the outcome being fair or the police officer being an ally. They found that there was actually an uptick in their views towards lawfulness itself and morality. So a child who believes that they were treated well by police would be more likely to be lawful and to be have legitimate interactions with others, even not in the presence of police. So I think that's very important to look at, specifically because BITS puts police officers in a friendly role in a classroom in front of fourth graders. So I think that research really colors the way that BITS should be viewed. Now, with that said, let's talk a little about the methodology. Again, BITS is taught in all 7 subdivisions and mostly in tag areas. So what I would like to do is take 10 different schools, 2 from each of the following areas: the north, the south, the east, the west, and the central area of Dallas. This is done so that we can get a good cross-section of races, genders, socioeconomic backgrounds, and social environments. Those 10 schools, 1 from each of those areas will be in a tag area, and then 1 will be not in a tag area, so that we can see if perhaps the penetration of that knowledge or the change in those attitudes can be affected by the crime rate or the amount of offenses that occur in the area where that child attends school. Those 10 schools, every fourth grader, because BITS is taught in every class, in any school that it's taught, every fourth grade class gets it. So every child will be given a questionnaire, 3 different questionnaires. 1 at the outset of the BITS program, so we can get a baseline of their views. Again, at the end of the BITS program, again at that 4th lesson, to see if there has been any change in behavior, and then again at the end of the school year, so that we can see if there has been any continued change in behavior, or whether they have regressed back to the baseline in the absence of that officer teaching the lessons. Some of the questions that will be asked of these students will be: do you believe you will be bullied at school? Do you have a positive outlook, or I believe I have a positive outlook on police, or I think that I could say no to negative peer pressure. These questions will be asked of the children, and they'll be asked to rate themselves on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is always true of them, and 5 would be not at all true of them. They'll be facilitated by the teachers, who will explain to them what the questions mean and how to rate themselves. In addition, the teacher will be given a questionnaire those same 3 times. We're going to ask the teachers to gauge their views of the amount of aggression, bullying, violence in their classroom. This will also be done so that as the students give their responses, we can kind of use the teacher's responses as a truth test to see if the teacher sees a reduction in bullying or reduction in aggression in the classroom that goes hand in hand with the students' self-reported strides in those areas. And then last, the questionnaires, there will be a questionnaire sent the same 3 times to parents, because we're going to ask them what they're seeing amongst their children. At that baseline point, whether or not they think their child is bullied or is aggressive, and then whether or not at the end of the program whether they've seen those changes as well. Once all of those results, we have all those questionnaires, we'll send them to a data analyst, and then they'll be tracked to see if there is a difference in the tag areas versus the non-tag areas, whether there's a difference between males and females, racially, ethnically, and we'll see if there are any places where there are differences in response. And then also, we will also look at the different instructors, because some of the instructors teach in multiple schools, so we will be able to see if perhaps one particular instructor does a better job of teaching the curriculum and getting a response from students, so that in the future we can keep the ones that are effective and perhaps not keep the ones that are not, because it is a very costly program. It's an overtime assignment, so there is a significant budgetary output from the department. The program does have some drawbacks. First of all, it's exclusive to Dallas, so the results or anything that we find is not going to be particularly true of other places, or at least we can't prove it. Second, it is a self-reporting program survey, so the attitudes of these children, or what they believe to be progress, may or may not actually be progression, and further research would need to be done. And then last, completion of that parent questionnaire is completely voluntary, so again, we don't get that same sounding board or that same truth check with the children. But I do believe it's a worthy program. I think that this research will help us to prove it, and I think that we can see a reduction in bullying and negative behavior amongst those fourth graders. And thank you for your time.